Good evening and welcome to the hashtag. Well, at last, the Chamberlain case. After 32 years of diligent investigation, the expert coroner has finally concluded that Azaria Chamberlain was killed by a dingo. Yes, thanks for that. In other news, hot off the press, John Lennon's been shot and Neil Armstrong's walked on the moon. Amazing stuff. 32 years. Let's reflect on that for a moment. It's taken the experts, the absolute best in the business, 32 years to come to a decision about that case. Which is funny, because you know all it took me was a couple of news reports and a 2-hour telly movie. I'm no expert, granted. There are some elements of the legal process that I don't understand, but I can't really imagine Sherlock Holmes saying, "No, Watson, we can't close the book on this one just yet, for don't you know that the most important evidence of a crime never becomes truly apparent until 31 years and 364 days after it was committed?" How much new evidence can you still be finding this far down the track? It's not like the crime scene's been completely untouched and isolated this whole time. You're not still dusting for fingerprints and finding blood samples on things that you haven't found before. So if it takes 32 years to come to a decision like this, if you ask me, the whole legal process is nothing more than a glorified too-hard basket. Putting off making the decision because you don't want to upset anyone while the issue is rife in people's minds, therefore you don't decide until 32 years later when everyone is so over the whole thing that there's going to be no real public outcry if they're unhappy with the decision that you've made. Either that or they're just cretins, and it genuinely takes them abnormally large amounts of time to make decisions about things. However, I'm not criticising the coroner on the way she does her job. She turned up to court and she delivered her finding. She was a little bit late, mind you, because she spent 5 hours that morning trying to decide what she was going to wear, 6 hours trying to decide what she was going to have for breakfast, and she spent a further 2 hours in the hospital because she'd spent so long trying to decide what she was going to have for breakfast that she'd passed out due to malnutrition. We live in a world where we expect Year 12 English students with enormous amounts of pressure on them to write 4 essays in the space of 3 hours, yet we give legal experts, the best in the business, more than 3 decades to read one legal document and flip a coin. Fantastic legal system we run. In fact, you might even say that our legal system has got more flaws than a skyscraper in Abu Dhabi. Pause for laughter. Does it really take 32 years to decide if someone's innocent of a murder or not? There's got to be a more time-efficient way of doing things. In theory, anyone in their 50s could commit a murder and they'd be well into their golden years in their 80s by the time they're in a prison cell, by which stage they'd probably welcome the change because it would be just like moving into an aged care home. The only difference would be to be more comfortable, more reliable supervision, and the taxpayers are paying for your Foxtel instead of you. Yes, in this country where we have teachers and nurses still struggling to get paid what they're worth, we also have criminals living in our prisons who are getting more taxpayers' money thrown at them than a skyscraper in Abu Dhabi. To finish up, I'd just like to apologise, because I know some of you might have been a little bit offended by what I said about Azaria Chamberlain, and I'm sorry if that's the case, but to be fair, I think it's difficult to tell what's offensive these days. The standards have become a little blurry. On one side of the spectrum, you've got ultra-sensitive people who get offended when you mention a colour, not necessarily in relation to somebody's skin, could be the colour of the car they drive, colour of a piece of paper, or even just the lyric in an innocent children's song. Non-colour specific sheep. Just mentioning it. In fact, who knows, I've probably offended a couple of skyscrapers by now. On the other side of the spectrum, you've got Matt Preston from MasterChef. On that show the other night, an Indian gentleman, let's call him John, created a dish, a curry dish, that was magnificent and the judges loved it. Later on, when the judges were talking about the contestants, Gary said to Matt, "What did you think of John?" To which Matt replied, "Ah yes, John, what a magnificent curry." Disgraceful. So clearly there's a bit of confusion as to what's acceptable, and there's a large grey area there. I mean, a large non-colour specific area. I mean, a big boned non-colour specific area. Shit. I mean, poo. Fuck. Well, I think that'll have to do, because I seem to be making more potentially fatal errors than a builder working on a skyscraper in Abu Dhabi. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go shopping for some more analogies. My name's Ashley McPherson. Cheerio, J. Simpson.